Hi, I'm Tracey L. Fisher. Welcome to Tracey L. Fisher Community Talks. I'm here with Deputy Mayor Alan Greenberger. How are you?
Good. How are you, Tracey?
I'm doing well.
Nice
Thanks
to see you
for
this
coming.
morning.
Listen, could you explain to the audience what your office consists of?
Sure. I'm Deputy Mayor for Economic Development for the City of Philadelphia. That basically has a couple of different roles in it. The first one is that I'm the Director of the Commerce Department. We can talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I'm also the Chairman of the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. And as Deputy Mayor, I'm responsible for both the running of the Department of Commerce, but also the coordination of all of the redevelopment agencies in the City of Philadelphia.
Wow. So that's like about 10, 15 agencies that have to directly report to you?
It's about a dozen of them that coordinate through me, yeah.
So actually everything that goes through the city of Philadelphia really come across your desk.
All of the development does, or at least most of the major development does, as well as our economic initiatives.
Which lead me to the question about the RCOs.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what an RCO is?
Sure. RCO is a registered community organization, and it was set up during the new zoning code commission, specifically to do a couple of things. One was to provide or give incentive to communities to organize themselves. Because what we have found is that when communities are organized, their ability to respond to development pressure is better. It's a single voice. Sometimes it's not exactly a single voice, you know, I mean, there are multiple voices in an RCO and in a community in general. But the RCO gives us at least one avenue to be talking to communities that is organized, and that's helpful to us. The other purpose of it was to provide more notification. What we found, you know, there are a lot of communities in Philadelphia that have long-standing civic associations and zoning committees that have for a long time have responded to development pressure. They tend to be in communities where there is a lot of development. But we had an interest in making sure that all communities in the city had a place where there would be an assured notification of development. And then in return, the bargain is, we give you the early notification, but then the bargain is you have the responsibility then to meet with developers, potentially host community meetings, not just for the members of the RCO, but for anybody who wants to come, and then report back on the results of those kind of meetings. So it's a bargain. Early notice, responsibility to meet, not just with community members, not just with the RCO members, but with the broader community in general. Now there are many places in town where the registered community organizations overlap. Maybe there could be multiple ones that have overlapping jurisdictions. And so there are some rules in the zoning code about how to deal with that, particularly related to the requirement that there be at least one public meeting for a given development project that might need either a variance or an ordinance. Those are the two things that kind of trigger the notifications. So the notification is not, and I apologize that this is kind of complicated, but everything involved with zoning is complicated, unfortunately.
Even the people, right?
Everything involved in zoning is complicated. It's not intended to be a notification of every single permit that comes across L&I. There are a lot of permits that come through L&I that are so-called of right. That is to say, the zoning's appropriate, owner has a legal right to do what they're doing, and it moves forward. That's not part of the notification system because that would be unbelievably burdensome. But what is part of it are the exceptions. So if you need a variance, if there's an ordinance needed, or if a project is of a large enough size that it triggers something called a civic design review. And a civic design review is essentially a committee of the Planning Commission that separately reviews large projects, and there are criteria for what means large project, but separately reviews large projects for their relationship to the public realm. So it's not intended to be a design review, meaning, you know, is your project, you know, this color or that color. It's about how does your project relate to the street, to the public area, you know, people just going through a neighborhood, walking around, driving through. So those are the things that trigger the notifications to the registered community organizations. They're then supposed to notify their own members, as well as potentially hosting a public meeting in which feedback can be given to the development team.
Great answer. Now,
Little
that
bit long
brings me,
answer,
no,
sorry about that.
great answer, because you have to explain away things, because you have to anticipate questions.
Right.
So sometimes when you give a long-winded one, nobody asks a question later because you done already answered it. That brings me to, because I'm a member of RCO, and I hear a lot of talk about 2035. Now, you're very familiar with 2035.
Sure.
Now, in the urban community, some individuals, not all, are under the impression that 2035 is a gentrification move. Could you explain 2035?
Sure. 2035 is simply that Philadelphia 2035 is the name of the comprehensive plan for the city of Philadelphia. And the plan is based on 18 different planning districts within the city of Philadelphia that are geographical. They represent basically aggregations of neighborhoods that probably, we think, see themselves as a neighborhood. And the measure of it is a very personal one in a way. It's like you live in a particular part of the city. When things happen around you, it's kind of based on when do you feel that's your neighborhood? You know, when do you feel like that's your concern, not somebody else's concern? So, and we had to organize it somehow. So we have these 18 different districts. We're going through each one by one, over a 5-year period, because these things take time, trying to meet with community people and figure out what are the important moves that have to be made, where are the key nodes or intersections that need attention, how is the commercial corridor doing, what needs to happen there, are there transit things, are there recreational things that need to happen. So the 2035 simply comes from a very standard thing that every planning agency probably in the world uses, which is to find a date that is far out enough that it represents a long-range vision, a long-range plan, but not so far away that it feels like it's beyond everybody's lifetime. And 2035 coincides with a date that the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission uses for its broader transportation planning. That's really it. It doesn't mean anything more than that.
Now, I asked that question because your office has a liaison, community liaison,
That's right.
am I correct? Now, what does their job consist of dealing with the urban community?
Okay, well, when you said my office, are we talking planning, commerce?
Commerce.
Commerce, okay. So we have in commerce a number of different divisions that have representatives in various communities in the city, meaning they're geographically based. So we have something called Office of Business Services, which I think maybe in previous administrations was called the Mayor's Business Action Team.
Right.
And there are a number of individuals in that office, and it's led by a woman you've met, Yvonne Boy. I take that back. It's led by Curtis Gregory. Yvonne is the other organization I'll talk about, the other division. And Curtis's team has people who are assigned to geographies in the city. And their job is to get to know the businesses in the city and basically be there to help solve individual business problems. Business problems range from anything, I'm trying to get a permit for a sign, it's not happening fast enough, can you find out about it? Tax issues, licensing issues, and it's basically somebody to help you solve problems. That's what they do. The other division in commerce that is relevant to this is called the Office of Neighborhood and Economic Development, that's Yvonne Boy's
Right.
division, and you've met Yvonne. And that's really focused on commercial corridors throughout the city, particularly the ones in the more distressed neighborhoods, because we get funding through the federal community development block grants, some of which is used to do economic development in neighborhoods, and that's restricted to neighborhoods that qualify. And so we run a lot of programs through what's called ONED, O-N-E-D, that include technical assistance, commercial corridor, cleanup programs, business improvement districts. There are programs called facade improvement programs, which have matching grants to do facade work. A new program called In-Store, which has to do with being able to renovate inside of stores as well, also a matching grant program. And then there are a few, much smaller number, but there are a few programs that we have with much more limited resources that we can also apply to any commercial corridor in the city, regardless of the level of poverty or wealth around it.
Now, let's say if someone had a building and they was fighting the city about it. The city say they own it, they say they own it, and it was passed down to an individual from, let's say, from their father. Okay? Now, what is an individual to do when that situation occurs?
What would probably, I think, you mean like a business building, residential, any
residential, whatever.
Yeah, well, we don't, the commerce doesn't typically get involved with that, but if it was a business involved, and somebody called the Office of Business Services, that are representative in that area, would at minimum put them in touch with the appropriate agency to deal with those matters. It's not a commerce matter, but that's how that would go.
Well, what's the hardest thing you find in your job in dealing with the community?
Well, I think the hardest thing, it's not just my job, I think it's the hardest thing in government, is that government means almost by definition that everybody's agenda is on the table, in a way. And whether it's a given community or a small group, it hardly matters what it is. When everybody's agenda is on the table, there's a lot of things that don't mesh yet, right? So a fellow over here believes one thing, somebody over here believes another thing, the government agency believes a third thing, and there's somebody else out there who believes a fourth thing. And in government, you have an obligation at least to listen to what's going on and then try to make judgment calls about what's best for the city as a whole, as well as what's best for individuals. It's hard, because people don't agree all the time.
For sure.
You know, and it's one thing if you're running a private business where there's and you get to make decisions in that context, but when your agenda is kind of the public agenda, it's a lot harder.
Now, what's the best thing about your job?
That's an interesting question. So I would say that the best thing about the job is that when you do get things done, when things move forward and something good happens, it's a big achievement. Because what it means is that, one, you got through the process, you paid attention, you made a judgment call, and if people are generally believing that that was a good judgment call, something good happens as a result of that. That's very exciting to me. And sometimes those are little tiny things, and occasionally they're really big things.
I have a saying, and it's a quote that my team live by. There's no such thing as a peaceful life, only peaceful moments. Really it is. It's only peaceful moments, and you take advantage of that and you embrace that. Now, I've been to your office quite a few times, and I love the way your office is ran. Meaning this, even if you're not there, they treat people as though you're there. I respect that. Now, is it hard to make that translate to the rest of your staff? Meaning not just in your office, but in other offices, but represent your office?
Well, you know, let's start at the small piece and then sort of work up to the big piece. The great thing for me, I mean, I just would tell you, I feel blessed by this. I have a terrific team of people around me in commerce, which is the agency I run directly, but also on the planning side, as well as the other agencies that coordinate through me. We just have a terrific group of people. They're energized. They want to do the right thing by the city, and we work well with each other. And you know, to the extent that I'll take credit for anything, it's helping to create a culture in which there is an expectation that there will be cooperation, and that people are generally trying to do the right thing, whatever the right thing is, and that they're going to cooperate with each other and work out the issues of the day. And I hope that in your intersections with my staff and with some of the agencies that work with me, that's what you found. Because you know, just like I was saying before, even in, you know, within government, not everybody agrees about what the right thing to do is. So you have to work it out internally as well as externally. Now, when you get to the bigger, sort of the bigger government, right? Government is 20-something thousand employees. Now, we don't deal with all 20,000 employees, obviously, in a given project, but we do have to work with other agencies that are not, so to speak, in my portfolio. We have very good relationships with them, and generally, you know, if I could digress a minute, you know, people oftentimes are very critical of the public, of government and of the public infrastructure. Not doing its job, you know, slacking off, whatever it is people say. And I came from the private sector. I'm an architect for 34 years in the city, moved over to the public side back in '08. And what I found is that government employees work very hard, almost to a person have a sincere and deep interest in the well-being of the city. Yeah, there are some who probably are slacking off, like there are, like anybody in any business. There are people who are not carrying their weight. But flip side is that there are people carrying more than their weight. There are people who are doing absolutely extraordinary things who nobody's ever heard their names, except for maybe a little bit here and there, and are really doing a good job. The reason that government moves slowly, that's a criticism here, is because of accountability. We're working with public money. We're getting paid by all of us through our taxes. We are receivers of public money that we then redistribute, and so there's huge issues of accountability that need to be worked out before action can be taken. And it's a big operation. There's 20-something thousand people. And getting all those 20,000 people, and this is where, you know, the mayor really comes in, and the council members, getting all those agencies that affect a given issue to move forward at the same way at the same time is the same problem. It takes a lot of work, a lot of coordination, and in a way, it's what government is. Why do people in government sometimes disagree about a given subject? Because it's the same thing we talked about before. The agenda over here, which is a totally legitimate agenda and goal set, is not the same as the agenda over here, which also has legitimacy. And on a given topic, so which one, if they don't agree, or they're not working together yet, which one's more important? Judgment call.
I understand.
An accommodation.
I want to thank you for coming. And I'm Tracey L. Fisher. This is Community Talks, and you just heard from the Deputy Mayor, Alan Greenberger. Thank you.